Hello and welcome to the channel. On today's tutorial, I'm going to be sharing with you how to sew a bustier gown with a gathered yoke. So if it's your first time viewing my channel, please hit on the subscribe button. So if you haven't yet seen the drafting tutorial, please go down to my YouTube channel, or I'm going to leave the link at the description box. So let's dive right into today's video. So here is my pattern paper, and I've gone ahead to cut this out. So while cutting this, the front parts, I actually cut it out on fold this way. So this is what I have. So I'm going to place to illustrate how to cut out. So while cutting, I'll add ½ inch on top and at the lower part also. And when you place your pattern this way, you're going to add ½ inch at the sides too. So now after cutting out, I'm going to explain how to cut out the side also. So here's my side pattern, and this is what I cut out. I added ½ inch on top, round it in front, and then at the lower part also. So I'll be using this pattern to cut out the wording of my dress. So do not add ½ inch at the side. So now for the yoke, we're going to keep it aside and we're going to work with it later. To join, you're going to join with ½ inch, but we'll be cutting out our wording and we'll iron it on it before we go ahead to join. So to cut out the wording, you're going to go ahead to fold it over this way to cut the center piece. Now I'm going to place this on it, and remember you're going to be adding ½ inch at the side. So to cut, you're going to start cutting from the under bust, and you're going to add ½ inch on this part. So at the upper part, you can go ahead to add ½ inch. I'm using a soft wording, so if you're using a thick wording, you might not add ½ inch on top to avoid having bulkiness at the upper part. So I'll fold over and I will be placing to cut out the sides also. Now while cutting out, I'm going to be adding ½ inch in front because you're going to mark the joining allowance. I'm going to place and start from the under bust just like I did. So make sure that you have your nipple to nipple plus 1 inch at this side, and then I'm just going to add the ½ inch all the way in front, and remember to add ½ inch on top also. So I'll just go ahead to notch it to indicate the part that I'm going to join to the center piece. So now to place my wording, I'm going to take the wrong side and place the shiny part of the wording on the wrong side of the fabric this way, and on the other side I'm going to place facing the wrong side, take the shiny part of the wording and place, and on the other side also I'll be repeating the same process. Turn it over this way and take the shiny part of the wording to place on the wrong side of the fabric. So I'll go ahead and iron this out. I don't have an ironing table here, so I'm just going to do it inside and go ahead to stitch with ½ inch. Now to iron this out, you're going to go ahead to make use of your tailor's ham. Here is mine, and if you don't have a tailor's ham, I have a video on how to make one for yourself. So go ahead and iron this out so that it's going to relax very well. So whatever you do on the main fabric, also go ahead to do it on the lining. So here is my lining piece. I've gone ahead to iron gum stay to it, and I ironed it out and joined it with ½ inch. Now to work on the yoke part, I'm going to place this single piece on another paper on fold. Now I'm going to be adding ½ inch underneath it, and I'm going to trace out. So this yoke, the new yoke we are cutting out, is the one we are going to use and cut out the gathered yoke that we have on the thumbnail. So at this point, you're going to add ½ inch at the upper part of the shoulder. Sorry, my hand blocked it when I was cutting out, and then add ½ inch at the neckline part of the yoke also. So now I'm going to open it, and that line that cut across it is the center. So now I'm going to go ahead to cut out a piece of net. So I don't have any actual measurement, I just cut out as much as I feel that will be enough to create the gathered effect. So I cut out 2 pieces on it, so and I will be placing it. So on each side, I'm just going to go ahead to notch the center. Sorry, on each mesh I'm going to notch the center because I'm actually using 2 nets. I'm going to gather 2 nets so that it's going to be stable enough So now on the other part also, I'm going to notch the center of the net, and I'm going to go ahead to place it. So now I'm going to go ahead and run a stitch to hold it down, so that when I'm folding or gathering it, it will be easier for me to do that. So after doing that, I'm just going to go ahead to trim it off at this point. So after that, we're going to go ahead to gather the net on the pattern paper. We're going to follow the shape of the pattern paper, and I will turn it to the other side. After turning it to the other side, I'm going to now place, so that notched part at the net, which is the center, I will start from that point. So this is to have even amount of mesh on both sides. So now I'm going to gather it this way on the pattern paper. So after doing this, I'm just going to go ahead to pin this part, and I'll keep doing this till I get to the end of the pattern, which is the armhole area of this pattern. So after gathering this part, I'm also going to gather the other part, and I'm going to hold it down with pin, and I'll go over to the sewing machine to stitch on the upper part and on the lower part of the pattern to hold down the mesh on it. I'm also going to top stitch on the parts that I cut out around the armhole to avoid it moving when I'm wearing the dress. Now I'm just going to go ahead to turn to the wrong side, and I'm going to trim off the excess that I have below it. And so after cutting it out, I'm carefully going to remove the pattern paper. So while removing it, please don't let the stitch on the mesh to remove. Just remove it carefully. So after I'm done doing that, this is what I have. Now I'm going to take it and place on my bustier this way, and I'm going to stitch on it. So after I'm done stitching, this is what I have. Now we'll be attaching the lining to it. And to attach the lining, I'm going to flip it this way, place it on this part, and I'm going to go ahead to stitch on the neckline and stitch on the other side of the neckline. Make sure that you stitch on the same line that you use in joining the yoke to the main fabric, and I'll go ahead to stitch the armhole and the sides. So before stitching the armhole and the sides, this is the upper part which I have stitched, and I've gone ahead to notch it. So notch it to relax, or another way to achieve this is to stitch all your allowance on the lining of the dress. So I'll flip this to the wrong side, and I'll go ahead to stitch the armhole and the sides, and then go ahead to iron it out. After stitching, this is what I have, and I'll go ahead to iron it out. Now moving on the back pattern, I have ironed gum stay on the lining. Now I'm going to go ahead to turn it. So I'm going to stitch at the zipper part at the neckline, and I'm going to also stitch at the lower part, and I'm done stitching. This is what I have, and I've gone ahead to iron it out. Go ahead to mark your dart intake. So I'm not sewing my darts yet, but I'm going to show you how to do that. That's your shoulder to bust plus 1 inch. Mine is 9 plus 1, I have 10. Go ahead and mark your zipper allowance. After doing that, mark your nipple to nipple divided by 2 and connect to that line on top. Mark ½ inch and draw out your dart intake. Now moving over to the skirt pattern. This is my skirt pattern, and I have gone ahead to take out about 2½ inches from the lining. This is to give the skirt a turn up effect at the lower part. And to sew, I'm going to open my skirt this way, and I'm going to go ahead to place my lining on it, and I'm going to stitch with ½ inch at the lower part. And after I'm done stitching, this is what I have at the lower part. Now you want to flip your material or fabric this way, push it up and push your lining backwards, and now you're going to measure out 2 inches. So why am I measuring out 2 inches? On the skirt pattern, while cutting it, we added 2 inches for our sewing allowance, like folding or turn up allowance at the lower part. So after doing that, you're going to stitch with ½ inch at both sides. So this is me measuring out the 2 inches, and I'll go ahead and stitch with 1/2 inch on both sides of the skirt. So this is my skirt after I'm done stitching it, and I'm going to go ahead to stitch the other side of the skirt also. Now I'm going to go ahead to turn my skirt to the right side. After turning my skirt to the right side, this is what I have. So now this is my skirt, and this is the turn up effect you're going to have at the lower part of your skirt. So go ahead and do this also for the other side, which is the back pattern of your skirt. Next, I'll be joining the front part of my dress, the upper part, to the skirt pattern. So now I'll pleat this into two, fold it into two, and I'll notch. This is to get the center of the dress. And now I'm going to bring my skirt for the front part, and I'm going to fold it also, and I will notch. Now I'm going to place the notched part meeting the notched part also, and I'm going to stitch with 1/2 inch from the waist, from the center down to the waist and to the other side. So after stitching, this is what I have. Now I will also repeat the same process for the back pattern. But before I do that, I'll go ahead to join the shoulder to the front part. I'll use the back shoulder to wrap the front, stitch with 1/2 inch. So after stitching with 1/2 inch, I'm going to turn it to this part on the wrong side, and from that part I'll stitch up the armhole part of the dress and notch it so that it will be flat, and then I'll turn to the right side. So after stitching the armhole area, I went ahead to sew my darts like I showed you earlier how to mark out your dart. And for my skirt, I'll be joining it. So whenever I'm sewing a bustier or corset, I don't add that to my skirt. So now I'm going to join it to the lower part. So, and I've gone ahead to do the same for the other side of my skirt. Now I'll be joining my skirt to at the lower part so that I'll attach my zip. Go ahead and measure down like 7 inches, and you're going to attach your zip to your dress. So this is the back pattern. Now you're going to, but before doing that, I want to go ahead and add the fabric for my drape. So this is the remaining fabric I have. You're going to go ahead to fold all the rough edges that you have. Now I'm doing an illustration which I'll go ahead to fold mine. Now I'm going to go down on the hip side of this dress. If you notice, the draping started on the lower part of one of the hip, and I'm just going to fold and top stitch. So after top stitching, to attach this dress, you have to shape your dress first before you can go ahead to sew it or stitch it to the upper part of the dress. So next step is to go ahead to shape the dress. Place your tape and mark your shoulder to under bust, shoulder to waistline, and from there place and mark 7 inches for your hip. So I have videos where I shaped my bustier, so I'm running out of time and I'm just going to do that off the camera. So after your knee part, you want to measure about 2 or 1.5 inches depending on how fitted you want the skirt to be, the lower part of the dress to be, and you're just going to go ahead to connect all your pattern. So I have gone ahead to connect them. This is what I have, and I'm just going to go over to the sewing machine to stitch. So after I'm done stitching, is now to drape it. So looking at the thumbnail, if you notice one part is going up and you want to go ahead to pleat it this way, and you can use your sewing machine to stitch on it or top stitch on it. So if you're making it for a client, if you're not really sure, the person can put on the dress and then you top stitch. So after this, we're going to go ahead to work on the neckline. Now you're going to measure what you have round your neckline. You can as well measure it like 2 times just to make sure you have the accurate measurement. So at the upper part, I removed my zipper a bit at the upper part so that my turtleneck will start immediately where the neckline starts, and I'll just measure it round right to the end. So now this is my pattern paper that I'll be working on. So what I got on my neckline is 21 inches. 21 inches divided by 2, I have 10 and a half. Now I'll be adding 1/2 inch to that making it 11 inches. So after doing that, I'm going to divide my pattern into two. That is the 11 inches into two. I have 5.5, and here I'll be using here as the center, which is center of the neckline, and this other part where the zipper will start. So I went up by 1 inch at this point, connecting it to the center of the pattern, and from there I'm going to connect back to the zipper this way. Now I'm going to go ahead to measure 1.5 inches because that is the length of the turtleneck I want. If you want yours to be higher, go ahead to mark 2.5 inches or more. Now after this, I'm just going to go ahead to connect and draw a straight line, and this is the center and this is the zipper part. You want to label this so that you don't misplace it. So I'll go ahead to cut out this pattern. After cutting out this pattern, you want to go ahead and go in a bit from the bottom to the upper part. You can take out like half or 1 inch. This is to avoid having gaping at the upper part of the turtleneck. So now I'm going to cut out my pattern, and I'll be cutting out 2 pieces for this, and place your material on fold, and we'll be adding ½ inch both at the upper part and at the lower part. So I'm going to go ahead to cut, and while cutting I'm going to add ½ inch on top and at the lower part. Do not add by the side, you have already added ½ inch. So this is what I have, and I cut out 2 pieces, and this is it without being folded. You know, we cut it out on fold this way. So this is it. Just add ½ inch on top and below it. So now I'll go over to the machine and stitch on top. So after stitching, this is what I have. You can go ahead and iron light gum stay on it if you want it to be more stable. And I'll go ahead to notch the neckline of this, and I'm going to open it up, and this is what I have. So I'll go ahead to iron it out. But before that, go ahead and notch the center of your turtleneck. So after ironing out, this is what I have. Now I'm going to be placing the neckline on the dress. So starting from the middle of the dress, go ahead and notch the center. You want to get the center of your dress so that it will be easier for you to place it. So now I'm going to take the turtleneck line that we cut out, and at that notched part I'm going to go ahead to place. Now I'm going to stitch with ½ inch all the way to the end, and stitch with ½ inch all the way to the other end. So start stitching from the front part of your dress. So after stitching, this is what I have. Now you want to go ahead and wrap it up with the other part. So now you're going to fold in with ½ inch pleats, and you're going to top stitch. Then fold in again, and you're going to top stitch. So if you're going to find it difficult stitching this way, go ahead and just fold it in, cover the ½ inch that you stitched with the front part of the net, and you can go ahead to pin it down. So at this part you can just fold it in and top stitch to have a neat look. So after I'm done sewing, this is the final look of the dress. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, please hit on the subscribe button, and if you have a question, please leave it at the comment section. See you in our next video. Thanks.